The conference hall buzzed with the kind of forced enthusiasm that only corporate events could manufacture. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in ivory linen, while servers weaved between clusters of employees balancing champagne flutes and making small talk. This was Mitchell & Associates' annual gala, the one night where junior associates rubbed shoulders with senior partners, where careers could be made or broken over cocktail conversations. He adjusted his tie for the third time, feeling out of place among the sea of tailored suits and designer dresses. His wife had assured him this would be casual, that spouses were just accessories to these things, expected to smile and nod while the real players discussed quarterly projections and client acquisitions. He'd taken the afternoon off from his construction supervisor job, showered away the dust and sweat, and squeezed into the navy suit he'd worn to their wedding 3 years ago. She looked stunning tonight, he had to admit. Her emerald dress hugged her figure perfectly, her dark hair swept up in an elegant twist he'd watched her fuss over for 45 minutes. This was her world now, so different from the coffee shop where they'd met 5 years ago, when she was still grinding through law school and he was the regular who always ordered black coffee and left generous tips. "There's the VP," she whispered, her grip tightening on his arm. "I need to make a good impression. Just follow my lead, okay?" He nodded, smiling as they approached a silver-haired man holding court near the bar. 2 other associates flanked him, a tall woman with horn-rimmed glasses and a younger man who looked fresh out of grad school, his eyes sharp and calculating. "Ah, there she is," the VP said, his voice carrying the smooth confidence of someone who'd closed million-dollar deals before breakfast. "Our rising star in corporate litigation. That Henderson case was brilliant work." "Thank you, sir," she said, her voice taking on a professional polish he rarely heard at home. "I couldn't have done it without the team's support." The VP's eyes drifted to him, curiosity flickering across his face. There was a pause, just a heartbeat, but he felt it stretch into something uncomfortable. This was the moment she was supposed to introduce him, to say, "This is my husband," with pride in her voice. Instead, she said, "And this is a family friend who was kind enough to accompany me tonight." The words hit him like a physical blow. Family friend. Not husband. Not partner. Not even boyfriend. A family friend, as if he was some distant cousin doing her a favor, as if the past 5 years had been erased with 3 casual words. He felt his smile freeze on his face, his hand instinctively moving to his wedding ring, spinning it around his finger, a nervous habit she used to find endearing. The VP nodded absently, already losing interest, turning back to discuss some merger that was apparently the talk of the office. The young associate, the one with the calculating eyes, smiled at her. Too warmly. Too familiarly. His hand brushed her elbow as he leaned in to whisper something that made her laugh, that musical sound he used to think was reserved for him alone. He stood there, hollow, as the conversation flowed around him. They talked about briefs and depositions, about partner tracks and billable hours. No one asked him questions. No one cared that he existed. He was furniture, background noise, a family friend who'd served his purpose by filling an empty seat. When she excused herself to use the restroom, he found himself alone at their table, staring at his untouched plate of salmon and asparagus. His phone buzzed, a text from his foreman about tomorrow's job site. Real life, calling him back from whatever fever dream this evening had become. He looked across the room and saw her laughing with a group of colleagues, champagne in hand, completely in her element. The young associate from earlier stood close, too close. His hand rested on the small of her back, intimate and possessive. That's when he noticed the camera in the corner of the ceiling. A small security camera, its red light blinking steadily, recording everything. He thought nothing of it then. He should have. The evening dragged on with excruciating slowness. He made small talk with other forgotten spouses and partners, people who'd also been reduced to accessories for the night. They discussed weather and sports, safe topics that required no real thought or investment. All the while, he watched her across the room, trying to reconcile the woman he'd married with this polished stranger who'd erased him with 3 words. Dinner was announced, and they returned to their assigned table. She sat beside him but might as well have been miles away. Her attention was fixed on the senior partners at the head table, her posture perfect, her smile bright and professional. When he tried to place his hand over hers, she subtly pulled away, reaching for her water glass. "Having fun?" he asked quietly, unable to keep the edge from his voice. "It's work," she replied without looking at him.
I'm networking.
"This is important for my career." "Important enough to pretend I'm not your husband." Her jaw tightened. "Can we not do this here? Please?" Before he could respond, the young associate from earlier appeared at their table, leaning down between them with easy familiarity. "Hey, the partners are taking bets on the Reynolds case. You in?" She lit up immediately, all traces of tension vanishing. "Absolutely. My money's on settlement before discovery closes." "That's my girl," the associate said, squeezing her shoulder. "Drinks after this?" "Usual spot." The phrase hung in the air, usual spot, implying routine, habit, a shared history he knew nothing about. She glanced at him quickly, guilt flashing across her face before she masked it. "Maybe," she said carefully. "We'll see how late this runs." The associate straightened, finally acknowledging him with a cursory nod. "Family friend, right? Hope you're enjoying the show." Then he was gone, melting back into the crowd. "Usual spot?" he asked. "It's nothing. Just a bar near the office where we sometimes grab drinks after work. Team bonding." "He called you my girl." "It's just an expression. You're reading too much into." She was interrupted by a woman in a crisp grey suit appearing at their table. The woman wore an employee badge identifying her as part of human resources, her expression professionally neutral but somehow ominous. "Excuse me," the woman said, her voice low and discreet. "I need you both to come with me for a moment." His wife's face went pale. "Is something wrong?" "Just a brief conversation. If you'll follow me." They exchanged confused glances before standing. He noticed how his wife's hands trembled slightly as she smoothed her dress. The HR representative led them away from the main hall, down a carpeted corridor lined with photographs of the firm's founding partners. Other employees watched their departure with barely concealed curiosity. They were ushered into a small conference room, the kind used for difficult conversations. 2 chairs faced a laptop connected to a large monitor. Another HR representative, an older man with tired eyes, sat waiting. The door clicked shut behind them with the finality of a cell door. "Please, sit," the woman said. "What's this about?" his wife asked, her lawyer instincts kicking in. "If this concerns my work performance, I should have my representative present." "This isn't about your work performance," the man said quietly, "though it will certainly affect your employment status. Please, sit." They Saturday. His heart hammered against his ribs, a sick certainty growing in his gut that whatever was about to happen would change everything. The woman pulled up a video file. The timestamp showed it was from 3 days ago, late evening. The footage was from a parking lot camera, their office parking lot, he realized, recognizing the distinctive red brick facade in the background. "Our security system flags certain activities," the woman explained, her tone carefully neutral. "This footage was brought to our attention this morning. Given the nature of tonight's event, we felt it needed to be addressed immediately." She pressed play. The video showed the parking lot, mostly empty in the gathering dusk. A car was visible. He recognized it immediately as his wife's sedan, the one he'd helped her pick out last year. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then 2 figures emerged from the building, walking close together, their body language intimate. His wife and the young associate. They stood by her car, talking. Then the associate pulled her close, his hands on her waist. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned into him, her hands sliding up his chest to his shoulders. And then they were kissing. Not a peck. Not a friendly goodbye. A deep, passionate kiss that went on, their bodies pressed together, her fingers threading through his hair. The video continued playing, each second an eternity. The parking lot lights cast harsh shadows across the 2 figures, but there was no mistaking what he was seeing. His wife's hands moved with familiar intimacy across the associate's back, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, she was smiling, the same smile she used to give him in their early days, full of joy and desire. The video showed them talking, laughing. The associate's hand caressed her face. She leaned into the touch like it was the most natural thing in the world. Then another kiss, briefer but just as intimate. Finally, they separated, him walking to his own car, her standing there watching him leave with an expression of obvious longing. The timestamp showed the entire encounter lasted 7 minutes. 7 minutes that destroyed 3 years of marriage. The HR representative paused the video on a frame that showed his wife's face clearly, flushed, happy, alive in a way he hadn't seen her in months. "This isn't the first incident," the older man said, pulling out a manila folder. "We've documented several instances of inappropriate workplace conduct between you and Associate Harrison. Late-night office visits. Extended lunch breaks. A hotel room charged to your corporate card in Boston during what was supposed to be a solo client meeting." His wife had gone rigid beside him, her breathing shallow and rapid. The color had drained from her face, leaving her makeup stark against pale skin. This isn't what it looks like," she stammered, her lawyer's eloquence deserting her completely. "It was a moment of, we didn't." "The video clearly shows what it is," the woman said firmly. "Mitchell & Associates has a strict policy regarding workplace relationships, especially those involving deception and misuse of company resources. This behavior violates multiple clauses of your employment contract." He sat frozen, unable to process what he was hearing. Boston. Hotel rooms. Multiple incidents. This wasn't a one-time mistake, a moment of weakness. This was an affair, sustained, deliberate, calculated. "How long?" he heard himself ask, his voice sounding distant and strange to his own ears. She turned to him, tears streaming down her face, mascara running in black streaks. "Please, let me explain." "How long?" he repeated, louder now. 6 months, she whispered. "But it's over now, I swear it's over." 6 months. Half a year of lies. All those late nights she'd blamed on cases and deadlines. The business trips. The times she'd come home smelling of cologne that wasn't his, explaining it away as crowded elevators and client meetings. The gradual distance between them that he'd attributed to stress, to her demanding career, to anything but the obvious truth. "Family friend," he said, the pieces clicking into place. "That's why you called me a family friend tonight. Because your real partner was in the room. Your usual spot for drinks. That's my girl." Jesus Christ, the entire office knows, don't they? She reached for his arm, but he jerked away. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she sobbed. "We were working late on the Henderson case, and we just connected, and I never meant for." "Stop." The word came out flat, emotionless. He felt numb, as if he were watching this scene happen to someone else. "Just stop." The HR representatives exchanged glances. The woman cleared her throat. "We need to address the employment situation. Given the severity of the policy violations and the misuse of company resources, we have no choice but to terminate your employment effective immediately." His wife's sobs intensified, her careful composure shattering completely. She collapsed forward, her head in her hands, her whole body shaking. "No, please, I've worked so hard. The partner track, I'm up for review next month. Please, you can't." "Your access credentials have already been deactivated," the older man continued, not unkindly but firmly. "You'll need to return your badge, laptop, and any company materials by Monday. Your personal effects will be boxed and shipped. We'll provide a security escort from the building tonight." "This is my career," she gasped between sobs. "This is everything I've worked for. You can't take it all away because of a mistake." "You took it away yourself," the woman said. "Your choices led to this consequence." The room fell silent except for his wife's crying. He stared at the frozen video screen, at her face caught in that moment of happiness with another man. He thought about their wedding day, her promising to love and honor him. He thought about the apartment they'd scrimped and saved for, the dreams they'd shared, the future they'd planned. All of it built on lies. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his keys. Among them was a spare key to her parents' house, kept there since her mother's surgery last year when they'd been checking in daily. He'd meant to return it but never had. Slowly, deliberately, he removed the key from the ring. The small sound of metal scraping metal seemed impossibly loud. He placed it on the conference table in front of her, next to the manila folder full of evidence of her betrayal. She looked up at him, mascara-stained and desperate. "What are you doing?" "Your parents live 40 minutes from here," he said quietly, each word carefully controlled. "You can't go back to our apartment. I'll be there. Pack your things tomorrow while I'm at work. Leave your key on the counter." "No, please, we can work through this." "Family friend," he repeated, standing. "That's all I am to you. That's all I've been for months, apparently. So go stay with your family. Your real family." He moved toward the door, his legs somehow still working despite feeling like they might give out at any moment. His hand reached for the doorknob, focusing on that simple action to keep from falling apart in front of these strangers, in front of her. "Wait." She lurched out of her chair, stumbling slightly in her heels. "Please, you can't just leave like this. We need to talk, really talk, about everything." He stopped but didn't turn around. "Talk? Like how you talk to me about working late? About your business trips? About your team bonding with Harrison?" The name tasted bitter in his mouth. Which conversations were real, I wonder? Any of them? "All of them," she said desperately. "I love you. I still love you. This thing with him, it was a mistake, a terrible mistake, but it doesn't change what we have." He turned then, and something in his expression made her step back. "What we have?" His laugh was harsh, humorless. "We don't have anything. We haven't had anything for 6 months, apparently. I just didn't know it." The HR representatives shifted uncomfortably. The woman cleared her throat. "Perhaps we should give you a moment." "No," he said firmly. "We're done here. She's been terminated. I'm leaving. There's nothing left to discuss." His wife, he could barely think of her that way anymore, wrapped her arms around herself, shaking. "Where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? That's not my problem anymore." The words came out colder than he intended, but he didn't take them back. "You made your choices. You chose him over me every time you met him at your usual spot. Every time you checked into that hotel in Boston. Every time you kissed him in the parking lot. And tonight, when you called me a family friend so he wouldn't know you were married, that was your final choice." "I was protecting my career," she sobbed. "The firm has strict policies about relationships. If people knew we were married and that I was, they would have said I was sleeping my way up, that I didn't earn my position. So you protected your career by destroying our marriage." He shook his head. "Do you even hear yourself? You're still making excuses. Still trying to justify it." The older HR representative stood. "I think it's best if we end this now. We'll need you to come with us to collect your badge and escort you from the building. Sir, you're free to leave." She reached for him one more time, but he stepped back. "Don't," he said quietly. "Don't touch me. Don't call me. Don't try to explain. Just don't." He opened the door and walked out, leaving her crying in the conference room. The corridor seemed endless, stretching out before him. Behind him, he could hear her voice rising in panic, the HR representatives trying to calm her, but he kept walking. The main hall was still full of people celebrating, oblivious to the drama that had just unfolded. He spotted Harrison across the room, laughing with a group of associates, his arm casually draped over the back of a chair. The man looked up, met his eyes, and something flickered across his face. Guilt, maybe, or triumph. Hard to tell. He kept walking. Outside, the night air hit him like a slap. Cold, crisp, real. He'd driven them here in his truck, but she could figure out her own transportation. She was resourceful like that. She'd figure it out, just like she'd figured out how to maintain an affair while playing the devoted wife. His phone buzzed. A text from her. "Please don't leave me here. Please." He deleted it without responding and started his truck. The radio came on automatically, a country song about heartbreak that was suddenly too on the nose. He switched it off, letting the silence fill the cab. The drive home took 35 minutes. He spent them replaying the past 6 months, seeing everything with new eyes. The way she'd started showering as soon as she got home from work. The new lingerie he'd found in her drawer that she'd never worn for him. The nights she'd come to bed after he was asleep, the mornings she'd left before he woke. The gradual death of their intimacy that he'd blamed on her work stress. All lies. All calculated deception. He pulled into their apartment complex, parking in their assigned spot, though he supposed it was just his now. The apartment would be just his too. They'd signed the lease together, but his name was first. He could afford it alone if he picked up extra weekend work. Inside, everything looked exactly as they'd left it that morning. Her coffee mug still sat in the sink. Her jacket hung by the door. Photos of them smiled from the walls, their wedding, vacations, ordinary happy moments that now felt like archaeological artifacts from some lost civilization. He sat on the couch they'd picked out together and finally let himself feel it. The betrayal. The humiliation. The grief for what he'd thought they had. His hands shook, then his shoulders, and then he was crying, great, heaving sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep and primal. His phone buzzed again and again. Texts from her, each more desperate than the last. I'm so sorry. Please can we talk? I made a terrible mistake. I love you. Please don't give up on us. He turned the phone off and threw it across the room. Tomorrow, he'd have to deal with everything. Tomorrow, he'd figure out lawyers and leases and how to untangle 3 years of shared life. Tomorrow, he'd start the process of becoming just himself again, not half of a we that had been a lie. But tonight, he just sat in the dark and mourned. Sunlight crept through the blinds, harsh and unforgiving. He woke on the couch, his neck stiff, still wearing his suit from the night before. For one blissful moment, he forgot. Then it all came rushing back, the video, her tears, the key he'd left on that conference table. His phone lay where he'd thrown it, screen cracked but still functioning. 37 missed calls. 63 text messages. He turned it back off without reading them. The apartment felt different in the morning light, smaller, emptier, like a stage set after the play had ended. He walked through it in a daze, noting all the small things that were hers, the throw pillow she'd insisted on, the cookbook she never used, the running shoes by the door from the fitness phase that had lasted 3 weeks. By noon, he heard her key in the lock. He'd been expecting it. She'd need clothes, necessities. He stood in the kitchen, coffee in hand, as she entered. She looked terrible. Still in her dress from last night, makeup smeared, hair disheveled. She'd clearly been crying all night. Part of him, the part that had loved her for 5 years, wanted to comfort her. The rest of him stayed frozen. Hi, she said quietly, hovering by the door like a stranger. You've got 2 hours, he replied, setting down his mug. Take what you need. I'll be in the bedroom. Can we please talk first? No. Just 5 minutes. Please. I need you to understand. Understand what? He couldn't help himself, the anger bubbling up. Understand that you fell in love with someone else? That you lied to me every single day for 6 months? That you were ashamed enough of me to call me a family friend in front of your colleagues? What exactly am I supposed to understand? She flinched. I wasn't ashamed of you. I was trying to protect your career. Yes, I got that part. Your career was more important than our marriage. More important than honesty. More important than me. He walked toward the bedroom. 2 hours. Then I want you gone. He closed the door and sat on the bed they'd shared, listening to her move through the apartment. Drawers opening and closing. The closet door. The soft sound of crying she was trying to suppress. His phone, he'd brought it with him, buzzed with a call from his foreman. Real life. Demanding attention. He answered, grateful for the distraction, discussing lumber deliveries and inspection schedules. Normal problems with normal solutions. When he emerged 90 minutes later, she was sitting on the couch surrounded by half-packed boxes, her face in her hands. I can't do this, she said when she saw him. I can't just pack up our life and leave like none of it mattered. It mattered, he said quietly. Past tense. You made sure of that. Don't I get a chance to fight for us? To fix this? He sat down across from her, suddenly exhausted. Fix what? The lying? The cheating? The fact that you chose him over me every single day? Tell me, when was the last time you actually wanted to be with me? When was the last time you kissed me and meant it? She opened her mouth, then closed it. The silence was answer enough. That's what I thought. He stood. I'll help you carry the boxes to your car. They worked in silence, loading her sedan with pieces of their shared life. Neighbors watched from windows, probably wondering. He didn't care. Let them wonder. Let them gossip. None of it mattered anymore. At her car, she turned to him one last time. I really did love you. I still do, in a way. In a way, he repeated. Not enough, though. Not when it counted. What happens now? You figure out your life. I'll figure out mine. We get a divorce. We move on. Just like that. Just like that. He pulled his wedding ring off his finger. It left a pale line on his sun-browned hand. He held it out to her. You should have this. Maybe you can pawn it, help with rent until you find a new job. She stared at the ring, tears streaming down her face. I don't want your ring. I want another chance. You had your chance. You had 3 years of chances. He set the ring on the hood of her car. Goodbye. He walked back to the apartment without looking back. He heard her call his name once, then the sound of her car door closing, the engine starting, the sound fading as she drove away. Inside, the apartment was half empty now, but it felt more honest this way. No more pretending. No more lies. Just the truth, clean and sharp and painful. He picked up his phone and scrolled through the messages he'd been avoiding. Most were from her, desperate, pleading, bargaining. But there was one from his brother, heard what happened. Couch is available if you need it. Or beer. Or both. He smiled despite everything. Real family. Real support. Real honesty. He texted back, beer sounds good. Then he opened his laptop and searched for divorce lawyers, apartment listings, ways to rebuild a life from scratch. It wouldn't be easy. It would hurt for a long time. But at least it would be real. At least he would be free. 3 months later, he'd hear through mutual friends that she'd found work at a smaller firm in another city. That she and Harrison had tried to make it work but couldn't, the foundation of their relationship too poisoned by guilt and betrayal to survive. That she'd asked about him, wondered if he'd ever forgive her. He wouldn't respond. Forgiveness was possible, maybe even probable, eventually. But reconciliation? No. Some bridges, once burned, stayed burned. He'd moved to a smaller place, closer to work. Started seeing someone new, taking it slow, being honest, building something real from the beginning. Learning to trust again, one day at a time. The story could have ended in rage or revenge. Instead, it ended in quiet dignity. A man who knew his worth, who refused to accept less than he deserved, who walked away from a beautiful lie to find an honest truth. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is simply leave. Close the door. Keep walking. And refuse to look back at what should have been but never really was.